station, and it is Telecommunications Week nationally. And in the studio we have with us as well, besides Deputy Chief Wolf, is Pete Sotos, who is one of Elgin's telecommunicators, and it's also Animal Control Week.
Yes,
so, talk a little bit, since there's no one here to represent that bill necessarily, a little bit about Animal Control Week, what it is, what the purpose of having a week set aside for it is.
Well, I think that these different weeks that we have to recognize people that do certain jobs, or especially something like animal control, where it's not a glamorous position,
the recognition maybe that
right, but truly a lot of the things that affect everyday residents are those little things. And you have a wild dog in a neighborhood, or you have an animal that's been hurt or injured. That person is extremely important, and it's more the everyday type things that get taken care of that are some of the most important things that we tend to overlook. And so I think that's why.
Well, there's been some big stuff in the news too. I mean, I know Officer Rogg dealt, was it a year ago now, somewhere around there, with the one with the animal hoarding here in Elgin, where they had in the van outside, and a neighbor had called about a smell, and then inside the house it was covered with dog feces. And just recently with that case, it wasn't necessarily in Elgin, with the petting zoo lady who had some animals on the farms where they weren't getting the proper food, the water was completely frozen, and so things that you deal with. And everybody can appreciate that dog that's left outside 3 houses down the entire day, and the dog doesn't have any food and water, and it's barking at the back door to get in because it's hot and thirsty. And what do? That's right. Where these guys come in.
Absolutely. In our animal control guys have had some pretty high profile cases, as you mentioned. Some other things that we've had some pretty significant dog fighting cases as well. In fact, we had one a couple years ago that our SWAT team actually had to get involved with, because it was a large dog fighting ring in addition to also a cannabis grow operation. And so it's not every day that the animal control guy comes on a SWAT operation, but sure enough, we had them there, and they were a big part of it, because in addition, while our SWAT team was securing the building, the animal control guys had to be securing all these wild dogs running around as well. So it was a crazy scene that they were involved in.
Yeah. Right. With Telecommunicator Week, we'll let Pete Sotos talk a little bit about that. But I think a couple of things, again, with media being as it is now, where it's up to the minute. There's some things that happen nationally that I'd like to talk about as well as locally. But some of the positive things is, I don't think people realize, is you're the first point of contact, right, with the police. And first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've seen cases where you talk a 5-year-old through how to perform CPR on their father who's had a heart attack. And I don't know if you're a parent or anything like that. As a parent, I see these things and I go, oh my gosh, could my kid do that? Some of these, how you guys have managed to do, guys and gals, to deal with this stuff and stay level and perform at such a high rate is amazing to me in all circumstances. So you answer that phone, you don't know what you're getting.
No, you don't. It's you never know what's coming in. We do have dedicated professionals, and like you said, National Telecommunicator Week was signed in by the president years ago, close to 20 years ago, I would imagine, and to honor these professions who are really the true first responders, and they do so much. I mean, you call 911 and the phone is answered immediately, and we can give pre-arrival instructions, whether it's delivering a child, CPR, choking, bleeding, any number of things, burns. So, and that's one of the big keys to 911 is that early access to public safety, or to the chain of survival, CPR, emergency medical. So we're fortunate in this community where our response is very rapid compared to some rural communities where that emergency medical protocol is more crucial because there's a longer response, but our responses are very short. So
one thing I just wanted to ask you, that you brought up, with the fact you guys do this. Elgin has a dedicated team, whereas, there's a lot of cities that have like a consortium that go to like not a clearinghouse, but one place that covers 4 or 5 different cities. Is that an advantage, do you think, for Elgin, where you in your mind know exactly where McLean and Big Timber meet, as opposed to somebody who might be in Sugar Grove taking a call for, say, St. Charles, and they have no idea, what street the person is talking about?
I think it's a big advantage. We're part of the community. Our telecommunicators go to the roll call with their respective shifts. Same one the police officers go to. They get the same information. They're part of the community. They're involved in some of the community outreach programs. So they're part of the community. They're invested. And it's a great feeling. Not only that, but they do ride-alongs with the police and fire department, so they get to know the town, its people. And it is. Say, Bill Wolf, he called the police last week. He had the same problem. And you start to recognize it before you even type into technology. We have so much technology, but there is a human side to it too. Yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the technology as well. A case that just this past week kind of made some national headlines, and we do this to you guys on the show here every once in a while, where we'll throw something at you that doesn't necessarily have to do with Elgin, but you're our experts. You're to me, okay, well, if I got a question about that, I'm going to ask you. So this was a case in Denver where a mother called in to 911, evidently, and her husband was in the house, and she said he was hallucinating, going through all the problems he was having. The kids were home. 13 minutes into a 911 call, he shot his wife and killed her. 13 minutes, I mean, now to the media is going, why would it take 13 minutes? What's going on here? I mean, can you kind of explain, maybe just, and take the Denver case out of it? I just kind of wanted to preface that. Mm-hmm. The call comes in. What happens?
When a call comes into our center, someone answers the phone, obviously. If it's a 911 call, they start taking the information. The protocol states they answer, Elgin 911, what's the address of your emergency, the location of your emergency. Once we have that, we can initiate a response, and shortly after that, almost immediately, there is, depending on the priority call, there's 5 different priorities. Obviously, the number one is the extreme priority. It's dispatched immediately compared to a lower priority call. And once as they update the information, units in the field are seeing these updates as they're being typed in.
Real time.
Yes. So our dispatchers are trained to enter brief information, not a long. You don't want to type a long paragraph.
Because then you're waiting until the end of the sentence as to what's going on, as opposed to kind of bullet pointing
it. You make a brief, bullet point. That's a good example. And the information out in the field units, they see it. Safeguards to this is our patrol supervisors, other department members, police officers, all see these calls that are pending. So you may not even be in that area of town, but you can see what's coming in, what's waiting for the police. So we do have many safeguards. There's a communications supervisor assigned to each shift that oversees the 911 center. They're not actually actively answering calls. They're just to supervise and assist. So we do have safeguards that hopefully this shouldn't happen, and I don't think it ever would. I mean, our responses are fairly quick.
I was going to ask that. And again, I don't know if you were prepared. What is an average response time for a 911 call? And maybe, I don't know, does that go by category? Because you said there's, 5 different? So
yeah.
For type 1, what is an example of a type 1 or a class 1 call?
It could be a domestic violence. Any type of a medical emergency is a top priority. Certain suspicious activity. I heard a noise in my backyard. Someone's trying my door, prowler. Those are all obviously high priority calls. And we dispatch them fairly instantly while one person's taking the call. Once they have the location and have classified the call, this is what's going on, they start field units and they're sent. And
so 2 to 3 minutes, within 5, under 5, somewhere does it fall into that?
Yeah, on a priority 1 call, it'd be very rare that a response time would be over 4 minutes.
I'll see that in the press releases sometimes that you guys send out. Police responded within 3 minutes of the call and when arrived on scene, and sometimes you read it and you're like, oh, it's just a little more information than I needed. Right. But then something like this happens in Denver, and you go, okay, maybe that previous press release that said that they were there in 3 minutes wasn't too much information. You know, maybe that was just kind of showing that, you know, this was taken, you know, very serious, and here's how we responded.
Yeah, absolutely, and and we, and those calls varies. There may be a call where we have an officer that's right around the corner, and the response time is 10 seconds, and then
so it can be classified as a 5, but they get there in 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And it also, with those, especially the lower priority calls, depends on how busy we are. If it's a very busy, summer day, and calls, we'll start what we call stacking, where there's low priority calls that there's not enough officers to send. They stack them. Matter of fact, when I was a new officer, it wasn't uncommon in between shift changes on a hot summer day to have 15, 20 calls holding for the next shift. So before they even start their shift, there was a whole queue of calls that needed to be cleared out before they even got caught up. But luckily, our call volumes and the seriousness of the calls have reduced dramatically over the years. And so it's very rare that we even stack calls now these days.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
You see every once in a while in a movie where someone's getting a ticket and another car goes speeding by and he says, "Drive safe," and the officer gets in the car and goes. Could that be a situation where he's the closest officer and he's writing a traffic ticket for something sort of, minor, right? And a classification 1 call comes into 911. Would an officer disengage from something like that to take over? I mean, how would he know, or she know, that they are the one that needs to go?
Well, if they're on another assignment, all our calls are dispatched over the radio, so they would hear that call.
And he might say, "I'm right there."
Yeah, they will tell you. And a lot of times, if it's something serious enough, they can drop what they're doing and say, "I'll respond." And it depends on the priority. If it's a parking complaint, he can say, "Have the other unit disregard. I'll handle it in 3 minutes when I'm finished here." Domestic violence, he goes, "Yeah, I'm going now." And
you can always come back to that parking call. Yeah.
Well, a perfect example was, I think you guys talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago. We had the incident where the father showed up to Larkin High School with what luckily ended up being a fake gun. But that initially came out as potentially there was somebody armed with a handgun at Larkin High School, and one of the first officers that was there, in addition to the school officer, he had just called out on his lunch break across the street, I believe in Beef Villa, and so technically in the CAD system, he showed it unavailable, but
right.
The call came across and he instantly cleared and helped take the person in custody within a few seconds.
Wow. Pete, tell us maybe a little bit about just like the variety of calls you get, and maybe there's a call that stuck out in your mind as being a real positive call that you've dealt with. Have you saved somebody's life? I'm sure maybe several times over. I don't know. Curious about that.
we had, it happens. And like I said, we have many dedicated professionals. Of note, recently, we had a gentleman call from town. His wife, they were expecting, and the baby was coming.
He's here.
And they called their primary care doctor in their hospital, and we were notified that this was there was a complication. The umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. So our telecommunicator gave pre-arrival instructions that were crucial. Fire department responded. She was transported, more protocol by the paramedics, transported to Sherman, where an emergency C-section was performed, and a healthy child. We have had childbirth, CPR, choking. I had a woman deliver a child in a car on Route 25 probably about 10, 12 years ago, so there are some positives. Those are always the best.
Yeah, when they come out. How about the scariest call you've ever taken? What was one where you were on the phone, and maybe not necessarily scared, but you thought in your mind, from the minute you answered that call that, oh my gosh, this is for real. Like, this is gonna be bad.
Any kind of an active assailant, active shooter, which several years ago we had one at JB's Pub, and you could hear the panic in the people's voice, the gunshots on the phone, rapid fire. It was scary because in your mind you're sending your responders, who are your coworkers, into this environment, and you're afraid that they're going to come into harm. Fortunately for us, the assailant was taken into custody without any of our responders or any other citizens hurt, other than what had already happened before we got there.
How do you keep your calm when, I mean, is this something that you go through training? Is there like a psychological training that you go through? I don't even know. Like, I imagine answering the phone, and I've answered the phone for my son crying before, and I started crying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you deal with that?
It does take a special individual. We do have dedicated people, like I said. Initially, I think what it is most responders, whether they're telecommunicators, police officers on the scene, paramedics, firefighters, you get focused on what you need to do. Your training, we do a lot of training. There's 6 months on the job training and continual education, and that helps because it becomes automatic, just like a police officer who goes to a call.
Scared or worried, but the training just kicks in because you've done it, and it's now repetitive, and you get kind of laser focused. Yeah.
Yeah, and afterwards, it does sometimes. You think about, wow, that could have been close. That could have.
After a call like that, can you go say, I'm going to go have a cup of water? I'm going to step out for a minute?
Definitely. Anytime a telecommunicator is involved in something serious, we will try to give them a break. And we do have available to us, and it's become more prevalent now, and it's a great thing, a critical incidents trustee briefing team we can call in.
Excellent.
For any kind of major event or incident. So there are ways to deal with those kind of situations.
So it's Telecommunicator Week. I saw recently on one of the posts that somebody here in the studio sometimes puts up that I think Elgin is hiring for a telecommunicator right now, full-time. Is that correct? Yes?
That's correct, yes.
Is it a job you would recommend to friends and family? What could you tell me about it if I was a prospective employee? Or, as an employer, what would you say about it?
It's a great opportunity. I'd recommend it. I've done it for many years. Especially for someone young. I was out of high school 2 months when I started.
Wow.
And it's a great opportunity to, with a high school diploma, come in a job where you can make a good salary and have good benefits and help pay for your education and get the experience, especially if even someone who wants to be a police officer or a firefighter. It's a great step in the door, get your foot in the door and get some experience. We've had people move on. I was a law enforcement explorer here before I worked as a telecommunicator. So, I mean, there's programs out there that youngsters can get involved, like the Explorer program, and get some experience and then transition into a telecommunicator job. And from there, they can transition into something else. I mean, it opens a lot of doors. It's a great opportunity. And we are accepting applications, and today is the last day.
Isn't it today? cityofelgin.org. I know you can go to the bottom of the page. There is a link there for employment. You click that, and then it comes up with all the City of Elgin jobs that are available. It's there. You can apply. I've applied to one or two in Elgin in my
All
time.
right.
Haven't been hired yet, but so it's good. Pete, anything else you wanted to talk about Telecommunications Week or about experiences you've had? Anything that funny anecdotes you wanted to share?
Yeah, we get interesting calls. We get a wide variety, which helps. I think that's when you can sit back and maybe laugh or say, hey, that was kind of, or you help someone out. It can be a simple thing. Help them find what they're looking for, where they're going.
Do you get? I know 311 is available now through there, not through 911 necessarily, but. Have you seen a reduction in the amount of calls you're getting? Are more calls going to 311? Are you still getting the calls that come to 911 and you think in your head, or you even tell the person, this is a 911 call, here's what you have to do? How do you deal with those?
Yeah, we will refer them, and I think it's going to be an educational process. This is something new, but it does have some potential. It has good potential, and it's worked in other communities. So it's, like I said, it takes some public education and for it to be. This is fairly new, so I really don't think we have much data right now, but I think it's a good start in a good direction. I mean, think about it. A program like that, if you have 311 and 911, you have 2 phone numbers you can remember for anything you need.
Yeah.
That's all you have to remember, and you got access to anything from the city. I think that's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And one thing I just want to say is that, the telecommunicators we have in Elgin are phenomenal, and they really are the ones that set the tone for everything. When a 911 calls in, they you talk about being able to stay calm and cool and collected, and if they're able to do that for the person that's calling in, it really eases their tension and makes things a lot easier for the person until the officers get there. And also, as they're dispatching the calls to the officers, if they remain cool, it just kind of sets the tone also for the officers that are responding to a very serious incident well. And getting that good information out and everything is so critical, and the job they do is phenomenal. And I can't tell you how much, as a police officer and as a citizen of Elgin, I appreciate what they do.
I heard a call recently that was on a website, and it was a boy. I think he was about 5 or 6, and he needed help with his math homework. Have you seen this or heard this one? Yeah, I figured you probably would. In the industry, right? So, the telecommunicator was so funny. It was such a cute call, and obviously you see other calls coming in. So if you had to disengage that call or end it, could have, but evidently they didn't have to, and tried their best until you heard mom in the background yelling, "Get off the phone!"
Well, and it's something that one of the outreach things that our telecommunicators do is they teach kids how to dial 911, and then also talk about when not to dial 911 as well. And we probably, in a given day, we get numerous, mistaken or improper 911 calls, and that's so the other side.
That's the thing, right? You can reach somebody,
right?
And you call it, and then just kind of, I got someone, now what do I do?
Right, right.
I think a lot of kids maybe just do it to do it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and the 911 for Kids program is a great program. It teaches kids how to call, what we need. It kind of gives them a little foundation, and they get a little understanding. And to teach younger kids that is a good thing, and I think it helps. And that's the thing. We get a lot of calls, and cell phones have really changed our industry a lot, because years ago you'd get one call for an car accident. Now we're getting several calls because everyone has a cell phone, which is good because we get a lot more witnesses and better information. I think that's one of the keys to anything, is especially here in Elgin, the community is so involved. We do get a lot of calls, and that's good that we do. But the big thing that if you do miss dial 911, whether on the cell phone, is to stay on and say, "Hey, I'm sorry," and we love that, because then we get to talk to someone, and we don't have to follow the steps later.
You don't have to hang up on it, and then you were looking at it like, well, something may have just happened there.
Call back or send a responder out just to check and make sure everyone's okay.
I used to work somewhere where you had to dial 9 to get an outside line.
Right.
And then you dial 1 for the country code and the area code. So you go 9-1, and then if you're multitasking, which everybody in the world does, shoot, did I press 1?
Right, extra 1, and next thing you know.
Next thing you know, 911. I've done it.
Sorry.
I've been there.
Yes.
So yeah,
absolutely.
But I've had incidents where witness to a car accident, and man, should I call 911? Oh, I'm in the middle of traffic right now, and I'm sure 20 people have already called. I don't want to burden them, and haven't. But you say it's not a problem.
No, it's not. And a lot of times, if it's something serious enough, that witness may have that piece of information that is needed by the police to help figure it out. So.
And we have had situations where everybody assumes that the other person is called in, and the next thing you know, nobody's called. Right. So.
What about? I know we're over time, but I had a quick question I wanted to ask you as well. Was with the advent of cell phones and the availability now, and everybody's got them. More and more people are getting rid of their home phones, but there are still a large contingent of people that don't want to, strictly for the 911, because they say, well, they'll know my address. If someone calls from 911 and they don't have a house phone, what type of information are you getting, and how much longer would a emergency response take? I mean, I'm told it's seconds at the most, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that gets involved. Can you talk about that?
Yes, cell phones, most cell phones now are phase 2, so we do get a GPS location. The only drawback to that is in a more urban area where you have apartment buildings and multi-unit complexes, it's hard to sometimes pinpoint exactly. For
You may not know it's apartment G
Yeah.
coming from this building.
You have a
You just have a
10-story
general, right?
10-story apartment building. It could be anywhere in that building. We do have access to where we can get the subscriber information for that cell phone to track it. We do have tools in place if we do lose contact or don't have an address to locate them. So cell phone companies are good at helping us out if obviously there's a need for it. So
And that information is pretty immediate to you.
yeah,
If needed.
if it's exigent, we can.
That's what I tell people, and that's the industry I work in full time. So people are always afraid, and I'm like, no, it's a matter of seconds at the most.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the GPS information, some of that information is instant.
Immediate.
If they have to track down subscriber information, things like that, that's not immediate. I mean, they can get it fairly rapidly, but if it was an emergency situation, the person didn't give us their address or their exact location, that would take a lot more time than we would want to occur. So
Okay.
we always stress for
still
people
doesn't
to-
beat the house phone.
Exactly, and then the house phone's going to tell you the exact address and apartment or whatever generally.
These house
So-
phones now that are internet based, is that the same? Does it come up with an exact address? So if I had I don't know.
Yes, yeah. If you have a phone through your cable company or something like that,
Right.
we still get the same information on your address.
Okay.
And then the nice thing about those voice over IP internet phones is that if you
It gives you an IP
register,
address.
you register your information. You say, I live at 151 Douglas. Well, if you spend maybe your winter in a warmer climate, you go to Florida, you can contact the provider, do it yourself on the internet, and change your address to 500 Dundee in Sarasota, Florida. So that phone will come up at the right location. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of a perk to something like that. Technology is great if it's used properly. So.
Yep.
And one of the other things that when we redid our radio system and our communications, when we updated all of our equipment, so our current phone system is capable of receiving text messages and video and photos. Now the 911 infrastructure is not set to do that,
Right.
but once it is, we're posed to be able to accept that information through a 911
Wow.
type system.
So you could say, as opposed to, well, I'll send you a picture,
Yeah.
send an officer out here, you can just say, okay, I'll send it right now, and boom, send it through the system to
Right.
you at 911.
That's what the future is. Next generation 911 is referred
Wow.
to. Text, video, photos. The other thing we have is our new radio system. We're interoperable. We can operate with any of our surrounding communities just by changing a dial. Our fire department has auto-aid agreements with other communities, and as soon as we dispatch, if we have South Elgin or West Dundee coming out, they come right up on our free and they can talk to us just like we're talking now, and we can do the same. So that's a huge thing that
In the
we couldn't
past, they
do.
would have to get to the scene and then get like a debriefing or
We'd have
something.
to call that dispatch center. Hey, our unit's on the scene.
wow.
They'd call you back. Hey, they need this. Now, they can do it all in real time. So our technology is phenomenal. We're lucky here because we're blessed with some of the best technology, and we're constantly updating it. It's nice when you have someone like Bill here who loves it, what he does.
Loves technology too.
And
Yeah.
just brings everything into us. I mean, we're constantly this. We got. It's great. We're like a kid in a candy store. it is. It's wonderful.
All right. Anything else you guys want to add? We're over time a little bit, so we'll have to cut it off. But if you have anything that you wanted to talk about, please, this is the opportunity now.
No. The main thing was just to feature our telecommunicators and the great job that they do.
I think Pete did a good job of
Absolutely.
standing up for the department there. Thank you guys very much. Have a great weekend. Hopefully safe, quiet, and
Absolutely,
warm.
Yes.
Yes.
Chief Wolf and Pete Sotos, thank you very much for coming in. You guys have a great one.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.